WNBA finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. You know, I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is,
according to reports, the meeting room doors at the WNBA offices were tightly closed. Additionally, the atmosphere inside was not merely tense, it was desperate. This meeting was not called by WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert to discuss routine schedule adjustments or quarterly financial reports. Insiders are describing this all-hands-on-deck gathering as a desperate attempt to regain control of the league's narrative before it spirals completely out of control. This unexpected urgency was reportedly triggered not by a failed drug test or a legal controversy, but by an impending statement from NBC that has the potential to dramatically reshape the hierarchy of women's basketball. For months, referees have been swallowing their whistles while rookies have been battered in the paint, and veterans have openly mocked the new face of the league. But now, the corporate powers have reportedly had enough. The WNBA is on the verge of receiving billions of dollars from NBC and other major media companies. But rumors suggest that those investments come with very specific expectations. And Caitlin Clark is directly connected to those expectations. This emergency meeting was about far more than basketball. It was about a potential takeover of the league's culture. And what allegedly happened behind those closed doors could permanently change the future of the sport. But to understand why the commissioner is reportedly under so much pressure, you first have to understand what NBC has allegedly put on the table. This wasn't simply a friendly suggestion from a broadcast partner. If you're enjoying this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 83% of viewers still haven't subscribed. It's completely free, only takes a second, and it truly means the world to us. So, have you subscribed yet? Great! Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get back to the video. According to these reports, this was a power move that reminded everyone who is ultimately paying the bills. Sources claim NBC executives have been watching the current season with a mixture of excitement over the ratings and frustration with the way the product has been managed. When you invest that kind of money, you expect your biggest star to be showcased, not hunted. Rumors circulating throughout the league suggest NBC made it abundantly clear that the Caitlin Clark phenomenon sits at the center of its broadcasting strategy. The old everyone gets a trophy approach to marketing no longer interests them. They want the Michael Jordan treatment. They want a clear storyline, protected stars, and a product built around the league's biggest attractions. Reports suggest the emergency nature of the meeting stemmed from what many described as an ultimatum. Either the league puts an end to the internal sabotage of its biggest attraction, or the network will begin setting the tone publicly. For a league that has long emphasized collective success, this represents a harsh reality check. Commercial flights are gone, charter travel is here, and the companies paying those bills want to make sure their investment reaches its destination. That is what makes Cathy Engelbert's position so difficult. At this moment, she is reportedly balancing 2 opposing forces that appear to be pulling in completely different directions. On one side are powerful executives from NBC, Amazon, and Disney, who view Caitlin Clark as the engine driving unprecedented growth and see the WNBA as premium content with enormous commercial potential. Conversely, she also has a locker room culture and a players' union that strongly reject the idea that any one player should be considered bigger than the league itself. There are rumors that Cathy Engelbert had to deliver some difficult news to the WNBA's old guard during this private meeting. The message was reportedly blunt and impossible to soften. The sudden rise in attention, higher salaries, and increased exposure isn't happening because the world suddenly discovered women's basketball. According to those reports, it is happening because of one unprecedented lightning strike of popularity. Admitting that a rookie transformed the league is a difficult reality for veterans who spent more than a decade building the game with little recognition. So the tension inside that meeting was reportedly thick enough to cut with a knife. But the television networks aren't concerned about seniority or paying dues. They care about advertising revenue. And right now, the numbers reportedly show that viewers tune out when number 22 isn't on the floor. Once you consider the timing of this intervention, the story becomes even more complicated. This emergency meeting reportedly came shortly after the controversy surrounding the national team roster. Many believe that decision marked the beginning of a growing conflict between the league and its broadcast partners. Remember, NBC is one of the companies broadcasting the games. By leaving the world's most popular female basketball player off the roster, critics argue the committee did more than upset fans. Reports claim the decision may have cost television partners millions in potential advertising revenue. Some insiders believe that moment became the final straw for network executives. From their perspective, internal politics and basketball decisions had erased what could have been one of the biggest ratings events in women's sports. According to league rumors, this emergency gathering may have effectively become a never-again meeting. Reports suggest future agreements could include safeguards designed to prevent similar situations from happening again. The message, according to those rumors, is simple. If the league wants to maximize its financial future, its biggest stars must be featured. Pure basketball philosophy is now colliding with harsh business reality, and history shows that the side holding the checkbook usually wins. There are also rumors that Cathy Engelbert was forced to promise that the league would stop working against Caitlin Clark's unprecedented popularity and instead learn how to build around it, even if doing so bruised the egos of others throughout the organization. That brings us to the subject many believe was also discussed behind closed doors, the officiating. A player who is repeatedly knocked to the floor while officials look the other way cannot remain the centerpiece of a billion-dollar business. A growing theory among fans, and perhaps now among corporate partners as well, is that the league has allowed excessive physical play against Caitlin Clark as part of the old welcome to the W mentality. But to casual viewers, and even more importantly to television executives, that doesn't look like toughness. It looks like poor product management. If a veteran sends a message by injuring the league's biggest attraction, ratings fall, interest declines, and investment suffers. Reports suggest cleaning up the officiating may have been one of the central topics of the emergency meeting. This isn't about manipulating games. It's about protecting the league's most valuable assets. The NBA eventually adopted that philosophy with stars like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan. For years, the WNBA has embraced a more physical identity and resisted star-focused officiating. But according to these reports, NBC isn't paying billions to celebrate toughness. They're investing in stars who keep millions of viewers watching. For highlights, they're paying. Reports suggest the way games are officiated could change dramatically, with players who fail to adjust facing more fouls, harsher penalties, and stricter enforcement. But the darkest part of this entire story may be the resistance coming from within. To understand it, you have to understand the psychology inside the locker room. WNBA players spent years fighting for scraps, traveling overseas to play in difficult conditions just to earn a living. Now the money is finally flowing into the league, but many believe one player is receiving nearly all the attention. You can almost sense the frustration. According to reports, there were serious concerns during this meeting about the possibility of a quiet revolt. What happens if other stars refuse to participate in NBC promotional campaigns? What happens if Caitlin Clark and those around her become socially and culturally isolated from the rest of the league? Rumors claim that some players have privately reached out to reporters in an effort to shape narratives questioning Caitlin Clark's value or portraying her fanbase as toxic. Cathy Engelbert reportedly understands that this internal conflict must be contained before it spills further onto the court and damages the league's brand. That is why the emergency portion of this meeting was reportedly focused on control. Veterans may be expected to embrace the new reality and smile for the cameras, but wounded egos are not easily repaired. If the league pushes NBC's vision too aggressively, some fear it could spark a backlash, creating a public relations disaster filled with accusations of favoritism and disrespect toward the players who built the league. Since money sits at the center of this conversation, it's worth looking at the financial reality more closely. The WNBA's value has risen dramatically, but many believe much of that growth has been driven by a single cultural shift. There is now what many call the Caitlin Clark economy. By some measurements, the Indiana Fever's ticket sales rival or even surpass those of large portions of the rest of the league combined. Opposing teams continue moving games to larger arenas whenever the Fever come to town. Team owners see those numbers clearly. They know exactly what is happening. But the incentives for coaches and general managers are often very different. Their job is to win basketball games, which sometimes means emphasizing physical defense, managing minutes, or making unpopular competitive decisions. That has created perhaps the widest divide in league history between the business side, owners in the commissioner's office, and the basketball side, made up of coaches and players. This reported emergency meeting was allegedly an attempt to force those two worlds back into alignment. The message, according to insiders, was straightforward. Business priorities can no longer be treated as secondary to basketball philosophy. If NBC wants Caitlin Clark featured in a nationally televised primetime game, a coach cannot simply rest her for workload management without a legitimate medical reason. In other words, the obligations created by billion-dollar media contracts are beginning to influence basketball operations in ways they never have before. It's a difficult reality, but that is often what happens when a niche league tries to become a global entertainment powerhouse. Business efficiency tends to replace romantic ideals. There is also an even darker and more speculative theory surrounding NBC's involvement. Some reports claim the network is exploring a documentary-style series following the league, similar to Formula One's Drive to Survive, with a heavy focus on the new generation of stars. If that rumor is true, then the anxiety reportedly felt by some veterans becomes much easier to understand. They are aware that the story is ultimately controlled by whoever tells it. The veterans know that if the cameras spend every night following Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, and if the final edit consistently presents them as the obstacles standing in the way of the league's brightest new stars, then their own reputations could be permanently reshaped. That possibility alone is believed to have been one of the biggest concerns raised during the emergency meeting. Many players reportedly wanted assurances that they would not simply become supporting characters in someone else's success story. They do not want to become the Washington Generals to Caitlin Clark's Harlem Globetrotters. They want respect. They want recognition. They want their own accomplishments remembered. But the harsh reality of modern sports entertainment is that rivalries sell better than harmony. NBC reportedly understands that the story of an established queen defending her throne against a rising superstar attracts far more attention than everyone peacefully getting along. The commissioner's challenge is convincing veteran players that embracing that storyline could actually benefit everyone financially instead of hurting them. For fiercely competitive athletes who already feel overlooked, however, that is an incredibly difficult message to accept. We also have to talk about the silence. Have you noticed how carefully every official statement has been worded over the past several months? After the first wave of controversial comments early in the season, the league's public relations strategy noticeably tightened. Many believe this emergency meeting reinforced an unofficial expectation that public criticism of the league's biggest attraction would no longer be tolerated. It may not be a formal gag order, but according to speculation, everyone understood the message. The executives know that every time a player questions Caitlin Clark's popularity during a podcast or interview, millions of potential new viewers hear it as criticism of the very reason they tuned in. NBC is investing heavily to attract those viewers. If new fans feel the league resents the player they came to watch, many simply stop watching. That is the retention battle Cathy Engelbert reportedly understands better than anyone. The lightning has already struck. Now the league has to figure out how to keep that energy alive instead of letting it disappear. That is why many believe this meeting focused heavily on unifying the public message. You do not have to personally like Caitlin Clark. But according to reports, openly damaging the product she represents is no longer viewed as acceptable business. For players who have always valued speaking freely, that reportedly feels like a corporate leash becoming tighter. And through all of this sits Caitlin Clark herself. She has largely remained composed, saying the right things publicly and refusing to fuel the controversy. She has carried herself like the perfect professional, yet the pressure surrounding her continues to grow. NBC is reportedly placing enormous expectations on her success because so much of its long-term strategy revolves around her drawing power. If she struggles or suffers another significant injury, many fear the entire blueprint becomes far more complicated. That is why some insiders describe this meeting as nothing less than a league-wide risk assessment. The WNBA is placing an extraordinary amount of faith in one transformational superstar, and league leadership now faces the challenge of protecting that investment while maintaining competitive balance. Building that protective framework may eventually include discussions about officiating standards, player safety, game presentation, and even future rule adjustments designed to showcase offensive stars more effectively. Some basketball traditionalists would undoubtedly argue that such changes compromise the game's identity, while business executives would insist they are protecting the league's future. That conflict sits at the center of everything happening today. Whether those rumored conversations actually become policy remains to be seen, but many believe this emergency meeting represented the first stage of a much larger transformation inside the WNBA. Messy, controversial, and largely hidden from public view, yet potentially one of the defining moments in determining what the league becomes over the next decade. We also need to examine the reported NBC marketing provisions. According to various reports and rumors, the new media agreement includes promotional commitments centered around the league's biggest stars. At first glance, that may seem perfectly normal, but critics argue it also creates a clear hierarchy. If Caitlin Clark receives the majority of the promotional spotlight, the remaining players are left competing for what is left of the advertising space. Agents representing other elite stars, including Breanna Stewart and Aya Wilson, are believed to have concerns about what that could mean for their own clients' visibility, despite their proven accomplishments on the court. That question of marketing equity reportedly became part of the broader discussion. How do you keep MVP-caliber veterans satisfied when the brightest spotlight is fixed on a younger star? Some believe Cathy Engelbert attempted to reassure veteran players that although they may not appear on every billboard or commercial, the league's overall financial growth benefits everyone through larger salaries, improved benefits, and stronger long-term stability. It becomes a trade-off between individual celebrity and collective financial growth. But for elite athletes, recognition often carries almost as much value as the paycheck itself. The implications extend well beyond this season. Many observers believe the WNBA is entering one of the biggest business transformations in its history. For years, the league depended heavily on outside financial support while searching for sustained profitability. Now, with larger television agreements and unprecedented public interest surrounding Caitlin Clark, many believe the league has a realistic opportunity to reach an entirely different financial level. Achieving that goal, however, may require embracing a star-driven entertainment model instead of relying exclusively on the traditional team-first philosophy that defined the league for decades. Some describe this transition as the symbolic end of one era and the beginning of another. Charter flights, larger media rights deals, premium sponsorships, and national attention are becoming part of the new reality. But major change rarely comes without resistance. Many longtime players understandably remain attached to the culture that carried the league through its most difficult years. Television executives, on the other hand, are focused primarily on ratings, audience growth, and advertiser value. From that perspective, the reported emergency meeting may have served as a warning that the league's business strategy is evolving, whether everyone welcomes it or not. Another topic reportedly discussed involves the future style of play. If officiating becomes more protective of offensive stars, scouting reports, roster construction, and coaching philosophies could gradually change as well. Teams may begin prioritizing faster, more skilled perimeter players capable of creating the wide-open, high-scoring style that television audiences generally prefer. Bigger, more physical defensive specialists may become less valuable than they once were. This would affect far more than one player. It could reshape the competitive identity of the league itself. Some believe general managers have already begun evaluating how their rosters fit this possible future. Faster pace, higher scores, dramatic finishes, and greater entertainment value are increasingly viewed as television-friendly basketball. Low-scoring defensive battles may still satisfy basketball purists, but broadcasters generally prefer games filled with offense, momentum swings, and buzzer beaters. League executives understand that excitement keeps viewers watching. At the same time, that approach introduces another challenge. Every compelling sports story needs rivalries, heroes, and opponents. Many believe the league is trying to embrace those storylines while making sure they never cross the line into genuinely dangerous play. According to that view, The reported meeting was partly about defining the boundary between healthy competition and unnecessary controversy. Publicity may benefit the league, but players' safety remains essential. League leadership cannot afford situations where legitimate basketball rivalries are overshadowed by allegations of intentional harm toward its biggest stars. Looking ahead, many observers believe the results of these reported discussions will become visible over time. Future marketing campaigns, officiating trends, television presentation, and league messaging may all reveal whether these reported priorities become reality. If viewers notice greater emphasis on Caitlin Clark, cleaner officiating, increased promotion of star players, and a stronger television-first presentation, many will point back to this period as a turning point. Regardless of whether every reported detail proves accurate, one thing is clear. The WNBA is entering a new business era. Television partners, corporate sponsors, league executives, players, and fans all have major stakes in what happens next. The conversation surrounding the league is becoming bigger than basketball alone, and the decisions made today could shape professional women's basketball for many years to come. If you enjoyed this discussion, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.